the different kind of funding mechanism for residential share of transportation costs. And you'll get a look at project list and criteria. And we're going to talk about next steps. I want to see how much we can get focused today, and so we can narrow it down for where we end up when we're through with this. So I think we should start off, unless anybody has anything they want to make sure we cover that I didn't mention. There'll be plenty of information there, so that's good. Why don't we start off with low income nonprofit work group, whoever is going to address that.
That's good. Give people an update. We have, if you look in your packet, one of the first things you'll see is a summary of the low income nonprofit work group. Just a quick show of hands, how many people around the table are participating in that work group? I know John is, Leslie is presented as well. So one of the things we're going to start doing in future meetings, not this meeting, but having people from those committees report back. So we'll be following up with some people after the meeting or on some of these to see if that's something you want to help us with, or pull somebody else off the other committee. But I'm going to do it in the, today. So the first thing, just highlight from that committee, just a reminder to this group, is that the two big charges of that work group is to look at if we move forward with a transportation utility fee, something like that. There's water and EDS currently have one of these discount programs to look at how those discounts could be extended or beyond that. So we could also have multi-family for transportation. And the other charge is to basically look at whatever funding mechanisms are being talked about in this group on the residential side or in the business work group, that we make sure that we're thinking about what the impacts are to low income groups as well as to nonprofits. We had a really good turnout. I think 30 people at the first meeting. Ruth Atkins is chairing that work group, and I think they're really a good job of just immediately getting into a lot of these conversations. So one of the things that we'll be doing between now and when that group meets again is to get a better understanding of how many people are eligible in the different categories currently, and whether or not they're being served. We're getting some really good information from Water and ES and a pretty strong program compared to a lot of the country about who's getting those services now. So that group had their first meeting, and it looks like they're going to have a breakout group that's going to allow us to just dig into the numbers more so that we can make sure that we stay on track. I think that's it.
Questions of Mark?
That's a dumb question, but the nonprofits, are they treated based on size or anything, or is a nonprofit? I'm thinking the difference between my 3.5 FTE nonprofit and the Vicine Animal Hospital, that might also be considered a nonprofit.
Yeah, Ken, you want to?
Yeah, currently the way nonprofits are treated is basically your use of the property. So if you have a 3.5 office setting, you come into something, you treat it as a nonprofit.
Okay, and then the second question has to do with landlords versus tenants. So why nonprofit is a tenant, or does the landlord get assessed, or does the nonprofit get assessed?
The way it's currently set up is when it's based off the Kayenta system, which is the Water Bureau's system of billing. And so we're basing it off their system, and so if the water bill actually goes to the landlord, the bill will go to the landlord. And if you're directly handling the bill, then the bill will go to you.
But I think the question was, if she's a tenant, or I'll say we're a tenant in a building, but the building owner is the one getting the water bill.
Yes.
The building owner get any kind of credit for having nonprofit tenants?
We don't currently have that set up, and that's something we can discuss.
Because what happens is my landlord then raises my rates. Starting to done, we're raising rates because well, utilities went up. So
Right. A lot of them assume that they pass that through.
And Corby, one of the things we're doing is to help with that conversation is, 28 other cities, with 28 other cities that currently have street fees, that we're going to get a lot of research to figure out which ones have these kinds of discounts and how they're applied. But that is definitely one of the harder issues if we were to have something like this, figuring out those complicated use arrangements.
Okay. Do you have someone teed up for the business community?
We don't.
I'd be happy to.
Great.
So I'm sharing that one. I may be saying a little bit more than you're expecting, and I still have to work this out before Monday because that's when we have our meeting. But I think it's healthy to talk about whatever kind of focus may be coming at the business meeting, that will have some implications. And I jotted down what I thought were 10 observations, and some of those I'm not giving you conclusions, but 10 observations from those meetings. First one, I think the general view that the need is there. And I'd be interested in finding that out here as well. Second one is that the ask is too high. And the thought of having 26.5 million saying we're going to find that one way or the other to find the best way, it doesn't necessarily resonate. Third one is the city needs to be a participant beyond just saying give us more money for transportation. The city needs to be investing as well. And by city, I mean such things as has been discussed. The $4.5 million going for streetcar operations, the council has a chance to deal with that in October. What's called the fall budget adjustment, and that could be generally funded and then move those funds back into transportation. There has been some discussion of other sorts of contributions from the city to demonstrate the importance of the roads issue. And we've talked about some kind of bonding opportunity, money freed up for new state gas tax. So there's an effort to make sure the city is in the game. I think there's a general view that the user fee is more popular than the business income tax as far as the business side goes. There's some concern about whatever we do on the residential side and business side, it hits some people twice depending on who they are, what the mechanisms are. So you can go own a business and be a residential. In some situations, you get hard. There was a concern that the residential approach not be too regressive, which I thought was healthy coming from the business committee. There's a concern about how we know the funds are spent appropriately, wisely, and what we say is needed. And while all of us know that we're able to do that, there's some thought of there's some kind of continuing oversight or continuing look at that. And I think that's an interesting question. There's a concern about seeing the projects, which I think we're going to see some of today. There was a discussion some of sunsetting. If there are fees or taxes, will they be sunset? And frankly, I see that the other way around and saying maybe we'll quit. I think that transportation will do a good enough job and they can show the results that gives them a chance to review that with the council and the public and get a continuation of funding or maybe even more funding. Sunset's got to be discussed at least. And then there's some discussion of referral, which I don't think is an overwhelmingly popular idea, but it's come up. So that's fairly significant in those areas, but it also, if we deal with those, it's going to help us focus a lot more. I don't want to spend a lot of detail on that today, because that's what we're going to try to get done and try to focus on and get some consensus on that. But there's a fair amount of meat there, and those are my observations, but I think they're accurate. I don't say but, I think they're accurate, and I think they're accurate. So any questions on that? We meet Monday, and I'd like to think we're going to be moving somewhat in that direction, but have more details. So whatever we're doing in this committee and the other one, it's going to be nice to get them all together.
So you said at the front end there's consensus on need. Is there any more detail or description of what need means to that group? I mean, how is it connected to how much money is needed, or?
No, that the roads need work. I mean, so because I think you've seen the case, you've seen the budget. There's a big backlog of maintenance needs, and people aren't saying you don't need the money because there are no road needs. There's a concern that the ask was too high, but you have to balance that. But sometimes in a discussion like this, you start by saying, okay, show us that you really need the money. I think most of us are beyond that, or at least that's the impression I get. Yes.
I think one of the other things that came up in that group is the maintenance using acknowledging that both need additional funds, but relatively.
That's exactly right. And my mind got that when I talked about list of projects, and then you can see, but I need to be more explicit about that, that is the case. And I let Leah address that. One of my thoughts is that's not necessarily a great issue to discuss in terms of percentages, because there are enough investments and improvements that capture both maintenance and safety as we think of it. That strict percentages aren't that instructive, but you can talk about projects.
Sure. So I agree that your percentages to move away from that conversation would be helpful in the respect that when we go in and do a road maintenance project, when we go back in to when we repave, we're also going to be restriping, we're going to be looking at the signals, we're going to be looking at signs on that street, we're going to be looking at a holistic approach on that street. And so when we go in and do a maintenance project on a roadway, we will also be taking safety into account and how we restripe it after we paved it. So I think there's really some overlap between maintenance and safety in the project that isn't being recognized when we talk about let's just pave a road that's in decay, or let's just put in a flashing hockey in a really dangerous intersection. That we can talk about those things holistically on a stretch of road that we go into.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, at the risk of getting off on the wrong topic here, but I think it's worth bringing up, noting the article in the order about the utility license.
That's a great thing to bring up. It's untrue. I mean, I'm not saying that you bring it up in the article, but that's not what happened.
Well, I've been on the budget advisory committee for 10 years, and I'll argue with you on that. I'm not giving details, but the utility license fee wasn't set up to help fund maintenance at Peabody, and it has consistently not been used for that.
That's exactly right. So my concern is the article said that it did away with the policy.
Yeah, and I didn't want to get into that, but I do think we were just talking about the so forth. The utility license fee is a good example. I think we need to address that. Somebody needs to address that and say, okay, we did this in 1988, created a fund to help maintain our streets, and it's gone away. So certainly, if we're going to create a new fund for that, I for one want to make sure that the same problem doesn't happen. And I think more than that, we've got to come up with an answer for the public that they can really be convinced. You and I can be convinced that that's not going to happen.
My points in the vision try to address that in terms of having some continued oversight and accountability. And I'm glad you raised the topic because you're exactly right on substantively. The money has no longer gone to the utility license for transportation. The article made it sound like the council consciously changed the policy, and all it did was change the reference to the policies that existed. They didn't really fit there, and the reporter picked up something different. And sometimes that doesn't change much different than it's there. And there's even been some discussion of if we could find some new revenue from another source, that if we're put in the general fund, that amount of utility licensee would be backed out and put back in transportation.
Well, I think, and that might be something we want to discuss on the start of the day. I think there's merit in that because utility license fee, it fits well. I mean, it was designed well and it does fit with Peabody, I think. So it does kind of make sense that we raise money another way for parks, police, so forth, and bring back that utility license fee.
Well, and it also could bring back the precedent that I wasn't around. No one is as old as Vic. Around here for a long time. And I don't know how it eroded, but the policy basically says there's a given amount that could be spent unless the council chooses otherwise, and they continue to choose otherwise. Thank you for raising that, however, because I think that article may have been misleading.
There was a resolution passed when Mike Lindbergh was the commissioner, dedicated, I forgot the percentage, violated day one.
Yeah. That's good, we didn't have to do it later. Get that violation out of the way. Okay, well, I think the points I was just giving and a couple of improvements, give us a chance to move ahead some of the business today. And, hopefully Monday we'll make some progress and then we can tie back in with the greater progress of this group. Can we get into the other topics? That's a rundown of those two things. Okay, residential funding mechanism. Yeah.
Yeah, so in your packet there, you'll have a 3-page flip, piece of paper like this. That, we talked through this, and kind of the objective today, right, as far as the residential piece goes of the mechanism, is, we're going to be looking at 5 different proposals here. 2 of them are, transportation user fee generated, and the other 3 are variations of income tax. So we'll kind of go through that, and kind of hopefully what we're going to try to get out of this is, try to get the discussion going and get some feedback. And what we're going to come back with the next meeting is a refined version of whatever options move forward from today. Okay. So having said that, I'm on the first page here, page 1, the number. And basically, this is kind of an evaluation matrix of 5 different options. So the first 2 is the R3 proposal, which is our transportation use fee that we proposed back in May. And then the second one is a little bit more of a progressive version of the original. And so this one kind of gets really into more of a steeper low income discount and some exemptions. And then we have the 3 income tax versions. One's a flat income tax. It looks like 0.2% on all income brackets. The progressive income tax, which is kind of taxing at all income brackets, but in a progressive way. And then the final one is a progressive income tax that's beginning from greater than 100,000 income. So everybody 100,000 and below would be exempt from this income tax. And this last one is actually pretty much in line with, proportionately in line with the polling that Commissioner Murphy did, which approval. And so the way this works is you can see the chart legend. There's the green, yellow, red. The green meaning the funding mechanism is low or positive relative to other mechanisms. Medium or neutral relative to other mechanisms, and the red would be higher than negative. So green being good, red being not as good. And so if you kind of scan just over the different evaluation elements on the left-hand side of that chart, you'll see we're grading it based on the progressivity, the complexity, the administrative, what's the tie to the use or benefit, and whether it's resident or non-resident. And there's some definitions down below. Generally speaking, as we kind of go through the numbers in the next couple of slides, as a staff, we kind of reviewed it, and it's kind of how we kind of graded out the different options against each other. Any questions on that, on the matrix itself? And we'll probably be referring back and forth as we kind of go through the numbers and kind of refer to the next questions. All right, so I'm on slide 2, or page 2 of the handout. So page 2 and page 3 are the same thing. Basically, page 2 actually is for generating 26 million for the on the residential side, and page 3 is the 13 million. So I'll probably be sticking with the $26 million version on page 2. So if you look at the top table there, we're giving examples here of what each proposal would look like at different income levels. And so as you can see here in the far left column, we're starting off with gross income, and then it gets down into what's called Oregon taxable income. So after deductions and credits, and based on that, here's what the fee would be from a transportation user fee perspective, and then at the far right, the 3 versions of the income tax, what those rates would be. Okay. So,
Can I ask a question there? I just looked at the numbers.
yeah.
Let's take Dean, because before I left, look, he makes $1 million.
Yes.
He's a lot more clever than pay $919. That seems like a high number.
Yeah, this is based off of the, these are proportional percentages that we took off the Multnomah County income tax.
I don't know, that stretches it for me just looking at it.
Yeah, Yeah, I'll check into the math, but.
Has to be now, he doesn't.
I think.
Okay. Very nice. Okay.
Okay, so moving on here. So under the Our Streets proposal name, you're going to see the numbers that you're kind of familiar with from our current proposal. The single family household, the low income discount, starts at $8.40. And you can see it goes up to, at $30,000 of gross income, the user will pay $8.40. If you're in a multi-family and you qualify for the low income discount, then you're paying $4.96. A little bit more of a progressive proposal, under the $30,000 income, the single family household will pay $6.37. Now with this, the difference between the 637 and the 840 is in this version, everybody from 30% to 60% MFI gets a 50% discount versus the 30% discount that we're seeing currently in the our proposal.
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, 30% to 60% MFI receives a 50% discount under this progressive this proposal. Everyone that's below 30% MFI would receive a exemption. Total exemption. So that's kind of one of the ways we're looking at it, and it's kind of one of the things that the local group is looking at, and so we decided to model it. And then same thing on the multifamily side. Low income discount between 30 and 60% MFI is charged at $3.76, and the credit also applies to multi-family households if you're under 30% MFI. Okay, so how does this compare to the different income tax proposals, right? And so if you look at the flat income tax, this is a flat income tax of 0.2% on all taxable income, and so this would result in $3.72. $3,000 income level. Progressive income tax, and I'll point to the bottom box. There's income tax assumptions where you can see what the different rates are at the different income levels. And so the progressive income tax for all income brackets, which is the next one over from the flat income tax, is $2.33, and that would be at an income tax rate of 0.13%. And then finally, if you scroll to the far right, the progressive income tax is going to be zero at this point because the Oregon taxable income is not at $100,000. And so if you kind of scroll your way down, you can see the different impacts at the different income levels. Now there's two rows that I've highlighted here. One's a green highlighted row at the 50,000 income level. Basically, this represents the median household income. It's a little bit higher than $50,000 actually, but, for the sake of simplicity, I just left it at 50,000. But it roughly represents the median household income, and that's kind of what a family would pay. A regular household family would pay would be $599 in a flat income tax, $375 in a progressive, and it's still paying zero under the greater than 100,000 progressive income tax. And you kind of line that up against, the current cost transportation would be at $12. So you can see it's a little bit low. It's, roughly, half the size. Flat income tax is like roughly half of the current transportation $12. On the progressive at this level, you'll notice that the actual monthly fee is $12.75. We had to raise the rates on this particular proposal just to take into account for the lost revenue on the low income earners that would give you credits, additional credits and exemptions. So we jumped from $12 to $12.70.
Could I see, just looking at this, because I hate to not look for any kind of consensus that exists. I'd like to see, I want to ask how people feel between a street fee and income tax. And then I want to ask push income tax. So every couple chances to express yourself, and you can dutifully do that like that, just on how you feel. This isn't binding, but it'd be interesting to see around the table where you are at a user fee versus income tax. So let's start with the user fee. Pretty well mixed. Okay. What about income tax? What? Go ahead, I want to go to the negative and say why.
Maybe personally, a user fee, so that everybody gets to use the streets every day. That is disproportionately. Unlike the arts tax, which not everybody uses, everybody in the city uses the fee, whatever flaws there, they can, I guess, the most fair way.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think that a city that seeks to be one of the most progressive in the development and deployment of this active transportation network should also seek progressive solutions to help ensure that everyone has access to active transportation options.
I also, challenge the presumption that everyone can use the system equitably as currently structured. You have a land use, underlying land use system that systemally pushes further out, and makes it more difficult to access services along that. So aligning investments with the progressive tax would help to mitigate. I think what we're saying is it costs a lot, it actually costs a lot of money to be able to access the 20-minute walk more exclusive over the past year. It's largely a land use and development issue, not solving here. So after that, see the funding for this.
And Jonathan, I agree with you, sort of. I mean, I think I'm voting with you on this, but just to highlight how complex this is, as we push people further out, they're actually using the roads more. Therefore, if you're looking at a user fee, they should pay more. You're just like, my God, it's
People don't
almost
choose,
any way you look at it, it's almost a lot.
people don't choose to live in Gresham and have to travel to develop and it's not a voluntary choice.
I think also, other than the user fee, I would think from a Peabody standpoint, the budgeting is going to be more simple time rather than potentially swinging greatly, and then what happens in the economy and whether some of the assets, I just think from the budgeting, getting to the road and all the projects, people are going to want to fund that provide steadier income stream.
I will, from a practical solution standpoint, the only polling results that I've seen come back that seemed like they had any linked at all were the ones around progressive income tax, where we saw 60% in favor, 37% opposed, and 3% unsure. It was the most favorable, least opposed, most sure. And I mentioned that last time we were all together. And know that we're going to talk about all of these different projects, but practically, we want to make sure that we're actually going to get something funded, as opposed to potentially making a whole lot of people upset with the user fee that has a whole host of complexity.
So I think people were favorable towards the income tax because many people did not need it. I just want to put that out there that that's part of the popularity issue. But I guess I don't understand why we couldn't create a street fee that you deal with the low-income folks by exempting them from it. So if we're going to exempt people from an income tax, why can't we exempt people from the street fee? And I say this because could you imagine if we had a world where electricity, no matter how much of it you use, you paid the same? Then nobody would think about turning off the lights. Or trash. People have an incentive to put less trash out with it costs more to put more trash out. And so there is something behind we have a limited resource, having a taxation system or a fee system that urges more efficient behavior, conservation behavior related to that. So I guess what I'm saying is I would like to see a user fee type system that at the same time deals with the equity issue.
I'm just adding one thing on that. For this group, when we reviewed the first phase of this project in May, there was a sense from our city attorney's office that providing exemptions or level credits that we're now showing in this progressive street sweep proposal were problematic, pushing us more toward a tax fee and some other concerns. And in looking at that more, looking at what other cities are doing, as of yesterday when we talked to our city attorney's office, they felt reasonably comfortable with the to your question, I think you know, right now, that show.
Yeah, I just want to, I might be getting a little ahead here, but just raise a little caution for me. I have, it's not an opinion on what you're saying, but we use the ITE manual in our department to make all sorts of decisions on how we charge people for developer permits, for all sorts of business decisions that we make. So if we're going to make a choice to start exempting people from the ITE manual based on income, we're going to have to be very thoughtful in putting together a guiding document and principles for PBOT on how that applies simply only to this fee and does not apply to how we charge developers. It doesn't apply to how we charge, like, development charges, permits, et cetera. We use the ITE manual broadly in our department, and we do not grant exemptions. That's all. I just want to point out it's going to add a level of complexity to us that would be difficult to manage with me.
Okay. Let me go through the income tax proposal just quickly and see where people are. And I'm not deserting the user fee income tax thing yet. But what I'm going to look for is preferences. Let's say we are going to income tax route. Which one of those three do you prefer? 1, 2, I don't see anything. 3. Hard to see. Let's go back again.
You have to choose one?
Yeah. If you're picking one, what would it be? Well, I'm just going from the left. That's where I'm going. 1, 2, 3.
So flat is 1, progressive is 2, progressive exempting anybody below 100 is 3.
Okay. Okay, you pick 1, 2, or 3.
So I kind of disagree with the premise, sorry. I disagree with the premise. These are my only choices. Why couldn't it be a progressive income tax of $80,000, as an example? So,
I mean, we can get to that discussion, but I kind of want to see just where people sit at the moment. And see if people really said, hey, we really have to do the heavily progressive one, that would tell us something. And if someone felt strongly about flat fee, it would tell us something.
and I would also want to know with progressive income tax for all, I would pay, assuming anybody who doesn't pay income. I don't know how well the income tax currently meets equity goals. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's probably a lot of households out there that have a hard time paying, that are still paying income tax, is what I'm trying to get at. So,
Income tax is considered mildly progressive. It's not heavily progressive. It flattens out very quickly. This is more, they laid out here, it's more progressive than the Oregon income tax.
Okay, I'm having trouble seeing where people are still, maybe because they're not enthusiastic. I want to go back so I can really look at hands. I'm going to go flat, progressive, and then heavily progressive. And I just want to see, does anybody like the flat income taxes? Okay, we got a couple. How about the progressive? 7 or 8. And the heavily progressive? Got about 3 of them. So,
And I just kind of agree with Chris, and it gets back to the original premise here. It's what it is that is going to allow us to get the funding needs met. And I think that there may be a whole, we talk about a cocktail, a whole bunch of ways that we can get there. So I'm not married to one or the other, but I'm just reading back or reminding myself of what we heard when we asked people what was going to work.
okay, but the mechanism and the amount can be separate. I hear you on the amount. The mechanism looked to me like middle was most popular, more progressive was next most popular. There's something about progressive income tax that works. And then there's some feeling that we're really never using. Someone help me with administrative costs. I assume the income tax is pretty easy.
Yeah, I have some numbers on the income tax on street costs. So this is from the Multnomah County, when they did the iTax. roughly, if we did the administration on the income tax through our revenue bureau, which we did with the ITAX, it was going to be roughly about $4.5 million for the first year and then $3.5 million sustaining after that. So that was back 10 years ago. So there's going to be probably some adjustment on that. The other option to administer the income tax, when we're talking about revenue bureau, was they did look at it doing it through the state, and they were asking about $7 million.
The first thing you said income tax, I saw.
Yes, income tax, yes, to administer the income tax. I'm sorry?
But it's local versus state collection?
Well, it's just that the state, they were just going to just charge them this administration of it. So,
They don't want to do it.
yeah, and it's basically, yeah, the amount they gave basically told us they didn't want to do it.
I'm shocked that income tax costs that much to administer.
But you're saying that they could have just said that's how much they wanted us to pay.
The state?
Yes.
Yes.
There's more allocation.
I guess, but it seems to me you could check a box, so we could have a form.
Especially with the
It's
excess.
like,
That's a 10% rule.
Yeah.
but more probable, like, when you file up, see if you pay your finance tax.
So how much does a user fee cost administration? We know.
It was roughly about 3% of the 3 million. So, you know, couple million, 2-3 million, like that. It was kind of the estimate we got from the revenue bureau. So, we'll have to go back, talk to the revenue bureau to see what their new estimate would be. But this is based on the Oklahoma County tax.
So the new tax that we sort of invent and administer costs us 3%, and existing tax we just add on to 10%.
Yeah. Because we're outsourcing.
Well, there is some existing, there's an existing international state level, but not.
But never, we pay income tax, and so the question is, can you segregate it so you know where people are from?
So let me go back to revenue bureau and ask them again, kind of confirm their number, that's what they sent me, so.
I think that what we want to look at is arts tax.
Yeah.
Maybe piggyback on arts tax.
But if I could,
Right.
I think it,
Actually, anything they did tax through the office.
I think the reason that the administration is not higher in the income tax is that it's also piggybacking on existing systems. We're talking about using utility billing systems, even if it's not on the same bill, it's in place, so it doesn't cost that much more. Where with the income tax, you're basically asking someone else to do it for you, and they're going to charge you for the privilege.
What I was saying on the arts tax stuff is that some of those relationships where the city can see what the taxable income is, taxable income threshold, between some of those relationships. There may be some advantages.
So how do we move this along? I mean, I'm not going to go ahead.
We just had a good point about this level that the progressive tax starts at, because it says greater than 100,000, and I realize that now we start paying for it, the gross income is over taxable income, because it's based on your taxable income versus gross income. So, I don't know, it gets really complicated to explain it, but I think that considering a lower level for what we call 100,000 might be better in terms of explaining this. But I do think that people that earn more money will be more likely to drive for the small, that people that are close out are forced to jobs or drive or whatever. So it's hard to correlate income with use. But in terms of selling, we also need higher income.
No, one of the points I made in the business committee is the question of double dipping. And we're going to get some people, I am not going to be simplistic in hiring from business, but I suspect there's something to be said there. And that you're going to find that someone's gonna find that extreme if we go to the really progressive.
Yeah, and I get a lot of complaints from people that say this is the wrong. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Two questions on the above 100,000 income tax. One is, I guess maybe for somebody to check that map, it seems odd that everybody below $500,000 gross income pays less on that one. I guess there's a lot of millionaires in the state, a lot more than I thought. It just seems odd. I'm not sure that that math is correct. But that might be a moot question anyway, because I heard rumor that that was probably not really legal for us to do, to establish a threshold for the tax. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? It's from staff saying they weren't sure that that was a feasible path to go down anyway. And if that's the case, it wouldn't matter whether we're talking about 100K or 80K. So I'm just wondering about the legality of creating a tax with a threshold like that.
Well, let me, anyway, there's some interest in being progressive. I mean, that's what I'm picking that up. So the question, let's go back to the street fee piece and talk a little bit about progressivity, because I mean, you look at the pretty rapid ascension over in the income tax proposals as you go up. Street fee obviously isn't. So say something about progressivity as our streets.
Well, at this point in time, right, the way that our streets proposal is, the progressive model is set up is that we're giving the exemption to anybody that's 30% and higher, or 50% exemption between 30 and 60% and above. I'm not sure. There's, we can take a look at, at the different discounts that we're giving the different MFI levels. But in order to get to the 26 million, there might, we have to kind of raise for everyone else to see the discount. We possibly could look at, I don't know, based on some kind of metric of some sort, maybe it's square footage or something like that, where your property is X amount, you're going to get more or something like that. But not sure if that's really doable or not.
Any other thoughts there? I don't know how to capture the income tax progressivity that we're looking at. That people like, I think the second progressive income tax was the most popular of those alternatives. How that can be married with the user.
Well, I mean, just being able, establishing the legality of being able to the books, I think it's get us pretty far down that road. We started there when we first set out this first 6 months ago. That was quickly getting off the table, and that's creating a lot of concern and tension. Having been able to get the buy-in from the bottom of kids without having that. So having that is a starter for a conversation.
Is there any discussion about CCA? We didn't talk about that.
Say that again.
Was there any discussion of, if you're on 30, 40, 60, whatever?
Right, and I think strawman used the word today that to a certain degree this was a strawman proposal that we put out there to just kind of highlight that because there's huge interest in progressivity between the two income tax as well as the street fee, was to just kind of highlight there's things you can do on both levels. There's issues that Selena was raising, consistency and other kinds of things that get a lot of really good attention to. Drivers calls everybody else crazy. But both of the measures could be, both those two measures could be more progressive than the lower.
You know, they can share the cost along with the street fee.
Yeah.
While it's more complex, it seems like one could make an argument for a two-tiered system, similar to your water bill with its base charge. The base charge recognizes that everybody uses the system for one reason. And then the progressive piece of it is ramp up based on income or vehicles registered or some other metric.
Well, and There's been a little bit of discussion of that, just because there are fixed charge water, sewer, this is kind of like a utility. And a payment to play the game, but that doesn't address this. If you say everything, I mean, it is the case you could establish something like that, but you exempt some people on the basis of income.
Not to, I'm open to looking into that, but let's keep in mind that this is not a formula for all of our transportation funding. This is only for the additional funding. So in a way, we already have that baseline already established. That's not entirely accurate, but so if we do an additional funding and we just make that progressive, we've sort of done that through here.
Okay, let me, I'm roping together. I think the two things. I think the business committee is going to get closer to the $13 million sheet in the 26. See that coming. Should be, I mean, if we're looking at numbers. But I also think they're going to have a preference for a user fee rather than business income tax. I mean, whether that's relevant to residential or not, I don't know if it's tidier to have a user fee both ways, and then we have to go deal with progressivity. I think it probably would be better after we get the cost of collecting that. Eric?
Well, it just sounds like there's a strong desire for like an option 2A on income, sort of in between that really progressive and the moderately progressive. And then a more progressive version of the street fee, those would be the two pair.
I think that captures it very well. Go ahead.
And I just want, like Cookie asked, to check our math on our progressive income tax, because it seems to be sparing our 200,000-aires and our 200,000-aires all the way up to a $250,000 there, less from a tax standpoint, and I guess it's relying on all of these millionaires that you've never seen up there before, so it's just something to double check.
If we have that many millionaires, I'm going to be really impressed.
Yeah.
So back to Gary's comment. I'm trying to narrow, obviously. What about saying we're going to try to look more of the progressive user fee here with the number 2 or progressive income tax? If we got down to that, we could at least have something more specific. We have too many options. We got swimming around. How does that feel? Is that a question?
Also a question. So, I mean, I guess for the folks who are working most closely with the lower income communities, if exemption is an issue that Leah raises, I mean, is it fair to make people pay $1 a year or something? That, I mean, is there a way to like, it's so tiny, but you're still paying something so that you can get around that problem with the exemption?
Isn't the committee, the nonprofit low income or whatever, aren't they supposed to be dealing with that?
They would be able to be looking at it.
Okay.
And there's some other people here at the table.
Okay. Yeah. So if we're making progress at all, it seems to me we can get down to, let's look and see what a progressive user fee is going to look like, and then the middle income tax, some work to be done. So we have two things to look at. Whether it's relevant to everybody, so if the business committee ends up going a different direction like user fee, I don't know how that discussion goes, but there's something nicer about being kind of the same rate.
It'd be nice if, similarly, there's folks who are representing businesses in Syria and get this back and not box in too much.
Well, interestingly, one of the comments that came out of the business committee is concerned about regressivity. So I think that's good. I mean, there's a way to separate we get together. Okay, that means I'm really trying to get some of this stuff off the table, so we come back and try to have two.
Yeah, two versions. One's a little bit more of a progressive income tax, and then in between the two progressive ones that we're showing, there's a more progressive transition.
Okay, is that an okay? Yes.
So it's not this progressive income tax, it's a different version.
Yeah, we'll look at a different version will kind of refine kind of some of the bracketing, in terms of, what that rate would be within different, income brackets.
I personally, and I appreciate Chris's comment. I mean, I think it's important that, everybody contribute, even if it is a really tiny thing, or maybe the very lowest end does need to be accepted. But I just have a problem with asking, a handful of residents to pay for the roads when everybody is using them. If we could stick to maybe tweaking around with the middle one, but that everybody, if you're not exempting out people under $10, except for we talk about here.
Yes, I think that's the intent.
Okay. Okay, and I'm.
And one of the echoes, portions, it's not a what you said is exactly true.
I think, good point, but I think in terms of acceptability, I hate to see people have an excuse to say, I don't like it, because someone paid $0 rather than $1. I mean, it's a small thing. You can think that. Okay, so the outcome here is we're gonna have two alternatives, then we're gonna see what they look like, and the number that's enough. Okay, good. I call that progress. Okay, so then we got another agenda item. I want to make sure we get everything in, and that has to do with projects.
Yep. And kick that off. You can pull out this handout, your package, I'll update on development small group project criteria. And I'm gonna, sorry for the amount of information I have to cover this meeting today on this criteria stuff. We're just getting a lot of information out there, and we're gonna take some breaks and we'll walk through it and make sure you can see that. The first slide we have here is what we need from you. And it's focused on sort of three things. I'm going to review some work we've done since last meeting and work that we want to do in different topic areas. So I want to get feedback if you think that's good or you think we're missing the boat on something or a question about it. Let's dig into that. The second piece, now another handout for that, is I'll walk you through the draft criteria and the strawman proposal for the different funding allocations that we have, example projects from that. So we're step through each one of those, like 7 or 8 of them, stop, and some feedback on the reference, comments. And then the last piece of a lot of times it's just get feedback from the applicants meeting too. Just help to make sure that we have public involvement in all the different groups we're meeting with, that if there's missing or wants to come with your group or something like that, we just make sure we take care of it. Does that sound okay? Is the flow? Okay, so the third slide is this allocation categories. We've heard before, we're trying to get away from a little bit of this percentage for this percentage for that, this overlap. And part of how we're talking about things is, yeah, this huge tree preservation is a really important thing to take care of. We've got some basic paving problem. We have critical safety improvements to the streets that are dangerous by design. We know about what we want to fix. Those together are sort of the two highest priorities. And then we have this basic operations and maintenance stuff, remarking the crosswalk, the other kind of operations stuff just has to happen. And we want to be able to talk about that as well. So the next slide I highlight is just to kind of give people an overview of where we are process-wise, because we are on a pretty fast track. Reminder, January through May, we did a lot of work, as you're going to see in a minute, around the extended criteria and projects based on polling of the work that we did. July and August, so we have another meeting this month, we're trying to basically get that to hopefully 80% product. Like if it's 80%, as this kind of allocation process and projects are working for us. With an idea that in our September meeting, we're able to take that to like a 95%, close, ready for the public town hall type meetings that will happen in October. So there's quite a bit of work to do between then after that public meeting, and we'll meet again, and we'll put something together for the city council. So if you jump to the next slide, street preservation accomplishments in this last meeting. There has been some really good work that we've done here. I know that like Mary Ann, I know Southwest, we have a meeting scheduled on 14th, we'll be on a bunch of these issues. So that's some concerns, and I can talk more about that if Mary Ann can in a minute. But what we have done is we've gone through the whole city now and basically said, what are all the streets that need less than a 2-inch grinding overlay, between 2 and 4 inches, and then major reconstruction, and have those prioritized. We have a draft map that's included in your packet. And again, like I said, there's neighborhood associations, sister coalitions that still really want to engage on this, and may not say this is totally working for them yet. But it gives you a sense, and it's hard to read, I know that it gives you a sense, all this will be on the internet in the next 24 hours. They have that really apps, you can zoom in more for your district coalition. But it would highlight the preventive maintenance, the minor rehab, the major rehab, we have identified across the city. The other thing that's included in your packet, I won't walk you through it, but highlights. I think we've done a really nice job of summarizing over the last couple of weeks. This is feedback from business community and others. How are you using the local money, and how are you using this money for busy streets and residential streets? And if you look at this next slide, what's possible with busy streets, we've concluded, and I think this is pretty significant, that if we allocate money to talk about prioritizing busy streets, that we'd be able to go on a, with the amount of spending we're proposing with this proposal, we would be able to be on track over a 10-year period to do almost all of the streets that need that slurry seal of the 2-inch. That's a really big deal on busy streets. We'd be able to touch a fifth of the streets that need the major rehabilitation between the above 2 to 4 inches. And if we follow up with Fred's idea of committing gas tax money that's available for this fix-it type work to a bonded program of improvements on busy streets, we could do a third of our busy streets that currently need that work with the bonding. Go ahead.
You use the term busy streets very liberally, and I tried to clarify through email that busy streets mean busy streets that are streets of citywide significance. This is a big difference between busy streets and improvements and busy streets that are citywide significance.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I think in this part we want to follow up with you. Maybe smarter than you, not going to be on the topic.
But I'm just saying that you use the term liberally.
She knows she's smarter than me.
And I have to explain to people.
We see what people think.
Yeah, you don't have to have. I'll take a picture of you. That'll lie how it comes to you. But I guess you're just one quick thought, Marianne, is part of what the streets of citywide significance is a tool for is triaging limited resources. If we're that level, we're still barely have enough, so we get into this fight about it. When we get into being able to touch all the busy streets at the 2-inch level, some of that starts to fall away a little bit because of the fact that you're not triaging as much for just a narrow set of priorities. So hopefully, maybe I'm going to talk more about it on the 14th if that's going to help. So, yeah, I think that's good. So just jumping along, the next slide on street preservation highlights that again with this strategy, we'll be able to touch a quarter of residential streets. We've heard that these renovations are massive compared to where we are now. Years ago, we didn't do any of those residential local streets. And then we'll be able to do 31 miles of streets in terms of major rehabilitation. Just want to highlight, and then I'll stop for a second, but the next steps on the street preservation, and then we'll jump into the safety stuff. So first one is we're continuing to identify paving projects that we think provide that nice overlap that we're talking about, meeting the maintenance and safety at the same time. So that'll be part of how we're reaching out to neighborhoods and requirements to identify that. Secondly, we're continuing to identify projects that align with other city projects. Again, during the last meeting, we're trying to coordinate with the DSP effort, make sure that aligning with those interests to see that more in these projects as they continue to move forward, especially the ones we want to do for 3 years. We're continuing to look at opportunities to leverage other projects. We'll talk about SEC funds, one of our major efforts to do that in a minute. The other things we're doing as next steps is we're, like the meeting we have on the 14th with Marianne and Roger from Southwest. We're meeting with different representatives from transportation coalition just to understand the issue better. In addition to that, we're using our community engagement liaisons as a way of reaching a lot of new important leaders as well that may not be participating in the district coalition system. Last one I guess we list here is that we'll continue to develop implementation strategies to ensure the most effective delivery of paving services. So we get a lot of questions. It hasn't been a huge charge for this group, but it's sort of figuring out how you're going to do the work, how much equipment you're going to have to buy, those kinds of issues. And I think that that's worth highlighting with this group to move along as well. So any questions about the preservation side of the issue?
Couple comments. When I look at the map, Mark, and I spend a lot of time walking around downtown. Downtown, the streets are all over more close to the and here again, this investment in downtown can go on for years and years and years. Main Street, frankly, didn't want to come downtown. Look, it's too high. Secondly, when you mentioned buying equipment stuff, how much is this gonna be contracted out versus how much are you gonna try to do with in-house schools?
I think that's not for this meeting, but I think for the next meeting, when we come back and we're providing you some more detail, we should go deeper on that.
Same word, where you're headed there. In terms of the contracting out the maintenance. Are you just asking, or you got a
Well, the first thing we're gonna do with a bunch of this money is go buy a whole bunch of paper machines and dump trucks and rollers and hire a Brazilian people project.
And and I agree, Vic, and that, I mean, I think that's a big part of what we look at, especially when we have something that might sunset, and that sort of thing, is why we real thoughtful about what those upfront costs are. But I think that's a piece of additional information that we want to be able to describe.
But I also think you have to think about when you contract out changing the way you do business and talk about that offline.
Yeah, I agree, and we can follow up.
Well, I mean, the fact matter is, if you say contract out, you got that, it'll have an engineer sit down and draw a very detailed set of plans and spend a ton of money up front. And essentially, you turnkey the whole thing.
Just interactive in terms of the prioritization.
Sure.
And how we incorporate equity into it so that we're not going to fix in streets that are very popular, whatever. Maybe that from some streets that neighborhood.
Right.
Everybody gets to enjoy different streets no matter where they are.
It's a really important issue and one that we're spending a lot more time as an agency really digging into. It used to be, I think, that with our pavement crews, we sort of had this, hey, we're just going to follow our pavement science and that's enough, right? And now it's been great, it's been, I think, really positive influence on these conversations about the whole agency. But there's this, we're too broke to do that, and equity's too important to do that as well. There's just a lot more of that. I guess the examples I'd give you would be if Gator Atlas here will tell you that example that's happening all the time now. He's got a safe process school project that he wants to do that has a maintenance issue related to it as well. So we're going to, as we have more conversations with the community about the highest priority projects, or example, we then go back to the maintenance crew and say, hey, you know, you're picking basically from this pot of 2-inch grinding over. If we can do this other one, right, and we have other advantages, that's part of how we're trying to do better on that topic. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Sure, I mean, because since the very beginning, the first time we saw these maps, and it's still in here. It's the criteria is supposed to say aligned to city people.
Yeah.
For clarification.
Yeah.
And I think we've been asking for a very long time, we want some more detail on that. And I know that PBOT is committed to a robust Title VI compliance program as part of this money. I think that's a great opportunity to start doing some exact overlays on race and on socioeconomic status. So ensure that these maps line up with where the money is.
So, website, I see two more things. What we represent, we're gonna deal with criteria. How deep are we gonna get into criteria?
We can jump into it in just a
I
second.
know, I want to hear these.
Oh, sure. We're basically going to, in a minute, we got this comment, I can jump pretty quickly to the straw man proposal, and we can start looking at what that criteria is, and we can get into some further questions.
Okay, so two comments.
Just checking in if I'm understanding your timeline right, and kind of piggybacking on what's just been said about equity concerns and how we're going to make sure those are integrated into lists as we go forward. It seems like your main focus in terms of connecting about those lists is during this month of August, which is the hottest time of the year to get through to people. And I can think of the neighborhoods in our coalition that are the least connected to us, that have the most need probably for some improvements, are going to be the hardest for that.
I think that's where I guess I'd ask you to hold on to that thought a little bit and just walk through the programs that we've identified. I think there's a lot that you'll see that will make you more comfortable. Just an example, like Safe Routes, we've done these extensive projects at all these schools, and prioritized schools that are more in need. And now we have this prioritized list of projects. I doubt you want to know, and I know Dan's been pretty vocal about this, is we want like in a month everybody to revisit those lists when we've done this great community outreach and figure out what the priorities. Probably not, right? And so it's looking at these lists and deciding which ones is the program strong enough that just building up those lists makes sense, and are there some that we need to enhance because the equity piece maybe isn't as strong. Those we get to flesh out early and figure out how we're going to deal with that.
And I guess, and that makes sense, because some of those things on the list have had extensive public process behind them already, and people are very aware. But I guess I feel uneasy trying to, represent in some small way Southeast Dublin. The land use and transportation was in week during August, we don't have a way to connect in some ways that we believe it's sealess. So it's those kind of concerns.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit bothered that we must come back to these meetings, and we have a map of the case of maintenance issues and not one of safety projects. Because, I think this gets to the equity issue. It seems to me that what we want to do, well, I hate dividing these things up so strictly, but in this case, I think it's first. Peabody has a pretty good system for evaluating what streets need what, how far along they are in their deterioration, when to do what, pay for maintenance for this. Okay, it's not perfect, we can always find something to complain about, but gosh, it's pretty good. They're good at that. So I tend to think on the maintenance side, I almost don't care about the list. I don't want to exaggerate, but I care about it less because on the maintenance side, I have reasonable faith that people can say, well, here's the street that needs the maintenance today, and here's the street that needs the maintenance next month. And they can create that list, and it's focused on saving money in the long run. That's your only goal. Now, those streets, you'll see more of those streets in the heavier traffic areas. Now, when we get to the safety issues, very different story. Now, I think we're going to see a lot more of those projects in outer East Portland, for example, but we're not going to see as much maintenance need as we will in, say, the Columbia Corridor, for example. So I think by seeing the two maps together, I would hope that we'd see a much better balance to it. And so maintenance, my suggestion is keep it strictly based on what's saving us the most money, so then we get more money back into the system that we can use on more safety projects. We spread those around in an equitable fashion.
Maxine, when you made your comment, were you thinking along those lines, maybe safety, or is that?
Not exactly, but you will find what the safety issues, some of them that, where you have no one on top of it.
I fully expect so. That's why it bothers me a little bit to only see this map. Because you start looking and go, how well is it spread out? And that shouldn't be the question. The question should be, what's the priority list of these projects that we save the most money?
Okay, so let's go back to where you're.
My brain was going with this was from that perspective of spend $1 a day to I just spend $4 down the road. And I'm thinking that the safety was more important, but there may be certain times, we have to figure that out, where actually road maintenance is really necessary in this particular case.
Those would be the trickier ones.
So, but I guess I'm looking at on the slide, you have some critical safety improvements.
Yeah.
You're getting into that, so I'm wondering.
People are able to just jump into this draft strawman proposal so we can get into the criteria project.
We got 20 minutes.
Yeah. So we've been talking about the second page after Trevor is on paving. I'm going to jump over that so we can talk about that and jump to the first critical safety improvement. So in the this is on page 3. So when you look at the first thing I'm going over a project, a safety project for a busy street. It's been a huge bunch of research that's come out in the last 20 years. That's what we should be still doing. We're focusing a lot of our energy. And the first thing that we identified is we spent about a third of we were going over percentages of funding for high crash corridors. And so the goals, what you have, if you look at that, you'll see criteria, some early implementation projects, and then if you turn to the next page, you can see all the high crash corridor plans that have basically been developed over the last couple of years. So to me, this is, and back to your point, this is the example of where I think that in general, we've heard pretty positive response from people saying, buy down those lists. You've been working with us at Crazy over the years to identify what those priority projects are. We generally like that, the criteria. To your point, John, about how the equity piece is going to work. I mean, one thing is you just look where the corridors are, there are a lot more of them in East Portland than there are any other part of the city. Not necessarily a good thing, but as you spend money, it just has to do positive piece. And we're looking at, again, looking at the TSP criteria and using that process to help with that. So this to me would be one of those examples of where I think we have pretty good programs in place already. The specific project that we picked, great to get community feedback about is that the right one or higher priorities, or we put too much money in one area or another. Some of that feedback, but this would be one of those.
Okay, so when I came into this movie, we said that this group is going to help with criteria.
Yeah.
So the chore here, and I don't think we're going to do it immediately, is to look at these criteria that you've got.
Yeah.
How's that deal? What should we add?
Exactly. So you see something on that capacity, some heartburn, you want to talk right now, or you want to get back to me, that would be great. And we'll be in the fall, we'll do lots of follow-up meetings as well between now and the next meeting, kind of refine this and identify those pieces.
It's real simple, just a very simple demographic program.
Yeah.
The city, I don't think, has yet done this, so this would be actually a great test case for the.
And when you say that, all, like, how much money we're spending in areas, how much revenue being generated?
I think at a threshold level, it's more just you overlay the project maps with the racial consensus and the socioeconomic of the survey. I'm sure just did it.
Yeah, we did it with all our grants. Anything else on high crash? Right now, the criteria we use is really sort of where we know crash. Crashes are occurring, so like, might be a surprise to you, but BH Highway in Southwest has a lot of drunk driving, more than you expect. And so targeted enforcement will be, once we figure out that that's a problem in that corridor, we target enforcement, that kind of enforcement. Or we might find another corridor that has more reckless driving. So that's it is, this
So
program.
that's not really a criteria.
None of these are criteria.
The what?
None of these are criteria. In my mind, they're all actions.
I think these are, when we were developing the program, these were sort of the decision-making criteria. I guess I gave you the example of the enhanced pedestrian crossings that are busiest streets. So behind that, in more detail, you would see like, how do we do that, right? It's based on number of crossings, the location to another bus stop. We can provide you a lot more of that detailed level, but this was sort of giving you a high level, some of those pieces. I get what you're saying there.
What are we ultimately going to do as a group here? Because we said we're going to respond to criteria. What does that mean about these list of projects? Are we asking how do we feel about this list? If we change the criteria, we have a different set of projects.
Yeah, I think in general that's what we'd like to be able to do, would be able to say, with this kind of criteria, and get the point you're raising there. Some of the stuff that's behind this, we can provide some more detail about that. But the idea is, if you want to kind of look at the criteria, look at the projects that are coming out of it, and if the projects that are coming out of it are way off the mark, and we think that there's a criteria reason for that, then we really like to do that. That makes sense.
What was the enforcement piece just starting, because that's, I mean, it's one thing to say, use data about areas that have high incidences of driving or registration, whatever, to identify conflicts, that makes sense.
Right.
I guess when I read increased targeted enforcement, I mean, that's like the key.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, and this would be a good thing for us to talk about for this effort for sure. Because when we've done, our goal of reducing fatals and serious injuries, we've used resources in this to do education and some targeted enforcement. And so it ends up being one of those factors that we look at as far as expansion. So at least I think that is a good thing for this group to probably get some more information about that. That's a big part of our program. But we try to use that corridor program to figure out where we can make improvements, where we can supplement that with additional.
So the street, even if we're going to some of these projects, in this criteria, some of the community is being raised would be used for.
So far what it's been used for is to help practice their work. So that like we're sharing information with them on corrections are currently, and specific funding for like additional or like making
So I think you were saying that you would maybe go places where there have been a lot of incidences of drunk driving, but then the question becomes, is that because it happens to be where that was enforced, or because that really is the place where there's the most drunk driving, right? So you have to have good statistics on, not just where police enforce, because police sometimes enforce certain places where they should be enforcing somewhere else, right?
Yes. I wish it was true. The sad part is so much enforcement is tied to where crashes occur.
Yeah.
That it's, it ends up having big, I wish it was true.
Right, but it's that mixture of things, right? Some of these are kind of like criteria, but look, they're more like the more appropriate title would be focus. And we have to rephrase these as criteria. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
So.
Right.
This is different from the criticism that these are actions, not criteria, but as you go through these different categories, and part of my worry is that the soup is getting diluted, and so it gets harder to explain to people what you're getting for your money.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at the outcome for high-tech corridors, it's $19 million, and on crossing improvement, you say it's percent of user fee spending, but I don't know how much they're spending. I would like to see a little bit of matrix to better understand. You expect to bring in, then you know, spend this much on maintenance, this much on safety, and a decision tree of that money. How is that going to be spent? Because I think people might start arguing over the detail. You know, do I need the sidewalk over there? Do I need to improvement and trade like that? One or the other. So, kind of better understanding your groupings and how to find detail.
Yeah, that's a little bit, and I think that's a good thing for this group to talk a little bit about. I mean, there's this, you know, we tend to go down this road where we say it's exactly this, you know, here's the percentages, and then, you know, here's the amount of money, and then here's the projects that I do. There's some interest in this group of moving a little bit away from that and then looking at, you know, best benefit that we can provide for a collection of projects. I get a little bit of that.
No, but I think that in terms of messaging, it's easier to message if you say we spent 30% income and such on this and this on this.
Yeah.
Then when you start getting this level of detail.
Right.
It's harder to understand.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think some examples of projects are good, so but I think there's to do on the criteria that people approve, so people understand.
Yeah. That's really good feedback. Thank you. So if we kept walking through this, the next one is this issue of safety on busy streets. So we've got, right now, we've got our East Portland motion, high crash corridor plan, safe routes to school plans, bike ride between facilities, identified bunch of crossings, not listed here, but trying to add access to pedestrian, access to transit stop plan is also incorporated into work. The criteria or decision-making principles that we're sort of using here are, again, you know, where we can have the biggest safety benefits, and we're looking at these sort of factors to do that. So this would be, again, another example where we're picking projects, we have the maps, we just didn't print them out today for you, we can share with you. They would show where these projects are and lay out everything. The next one, safety on busy streets. You know, we have some experience with this lately. It's $16 million, $8 million for $8 million in Southwest. When we did that, these factors, these criteria that we were looking at were really, you know, big drivers in what allowed us, I think, to pick some really nice projects in East Portland, the process. In Southwest, what we've done here is we've listed where you can what some of those highest priority projects are that didn't get funded, and for Southwest, and for Colgate, some examples.
Sure. Do you just try to collect data, do they collect data on which streets on bus lines are kind of being put on? Was they get a report back from operators, from these folks, as to which lines are on streets that have that?
I work really closely with Young Park, over a friend that we had in the past, and he would give us information like that, where they have, you know, a problem related to a maintenance issue. Is that what you're asking?
The operators are doing their best, obviously, they guide every day and you can file a process.
Right, okay, we can look into that.
The streets of city wide significance is based on number of transit trips on any streets, so that's part of what the curious.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, Marion, this is sort of a question for you. I'm trying to figure out how best to look at these lists and how it's balanced out. And it does help to have, like, okay, 10% is going to go to safety on the sidewalk. I'm sure that's just a rough guideline, but, you know,
Yeah.
that's helpful. As you do the math, I'm wondering if maybe needed, perhaps the best thing to do is to give two maps. One would be, let's say, you know, a 3-year list or a 5-year list at $13 million, and then another one for the next $13 million. So you ended up with $26 million. There's your 3 or 5-year list of projects. So it's sort of, you know, you got two maps.
Yeah.
First group, second group, and you can kind of see that. Would that be?
Yeah, I'm trying to see of these percentages, what does that mean in terms of dollars?
Right.
What
Yeah.
are 60 million
Right.
ones, so maybe we can do this another way of understanding what's going to be spent.
Okay, let's start taking stock of what we're gonna get next time. And we're back to well, the first thing, we're gonna have a business committee meeting, and I will narrow in the direction we're talking about. So that's worth knowing, so we know we're matching then probably something about amounts. So second, we're gonna have 2 funding alternatives. And get some work on those, we can look at that. And then third, I think all of you have the opportunity to get back with criteria. Do some instruction on how you want to group it and maps for both safety and maintenance and the demographic overlay. But any comments on criteria, that's strike the person take up the cause and changes.
Yeah.
But if we have that, that strikes me as sort of capturing where we're helping to improve that.
Can we also try to get back on the list of projects based on the criteria?
Yeah.
I guess I'm going back to Mary Lynn's point, pointing out those sort of top criteria that you're kind of utilizing for everything. Where we're going to save the most money over the long run, where we're going to serve neighborhoods that have been traditionally underserved, so that it's easier to talk to the public about why those choices are being made. This is way too complicated.
Right.
And if it adds to that, if there's history of it, this has been a project that's been in the works that people have already committed to. So it's not open for discussion or debate or trade, if you will.
Right.
If there is any history to put that in there.
And I think that's the piece that you guys would be really helpful on as well. To be honest with you, we have, it's just hard. I mean, we had a conversation about we want to go really deep. That's great, talk about those details, but then you also need to summarize it up. So I apologize if it's a little too much detail at this level, but I know you guys don't. This technical group gives some of that really detailed information. Nobody's going to try to fully summarize it. So we do have to, I know it's painful to get a lot of this stuff out there. It's really good feedback we've got.
You can go down, the website.
Right. I hear you. I think that's all.
Anything else you want to see next time? The quality of the work's going to go way up next time to Jamie.
Yes.
Okay, I think we did it. We get 3 orders. Thank you. Put her in.